Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. First of all, can I be heard? It's a question I always have to ask. Am I audible? And this is only available to the folks on Discord. So if you could please let me know whether or not, hello, yes, so I can be heard, I guess. Yes, awesome, awesome. So welcome to our latest live stream. We had a lot fewer people waiting, but that makes things a lot more manageable for my poor moderators who, frankly, were just getting buried last week. Not that I have a problem with that. I was very, very humbled and grateful for all of the people that came to say hi. So I really do appreciate that. And so welcome here. And this is going to be an unusual sort of live stream. We're going to be discussing a very particular topic. And sorry, I've got a bit of a dry throat, which could present a bit of a problem here. But I call it, or we call it, the Martian way. And when I say we, it's to the future. And some of you may be familiar with the short story that was entitled The Martian Way. But in any event, we're talking about a future colony on Mars. What are they likely to do? What kind of people are they likely to be? How are they going to get themselves established? And are they going to decide to become independent? All of those things are extremely important details. And so here we go. We just, the first episode, and by the way, this collaborative deal that I have going on with To the Future is going to be starting on Friday. This Friday, and it's going to be me starting it out, the first episode. It'll be a 4-part series, me, then them, finishing it up. And of course, we're doing this because we like to collaborate, first of all. And second of all, they were a huge help in getting this channel started. As a matter of fact, they may have been the biggest help to getting my channel going because of a collaboration that we did months ago. And that being the case, I went from fewer than 1,000 subscribers to over 3,000 subscribers at the time, and just went on my way up. And so at this point, we really want to try to help each other out, both in terms of exposing each other's membership to each other's channel, but also to contribute to a very important topic in our own way. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with To the Future, they are a lovely couple, Sebastian and Shishuan. Sebastian is from Romania but lives in Germany. Shishuan is from China and lives in Germany. Very interesting, a truly multinational collaboration, and they put out some really good stuff. The quality of their programming is extremely high. And they talk about different things than I do. They talk about disruptive technologies, as they like to call it, things like Tesla, things like the hyperlink, those sorts of things. Technologies that I don't talk about as much. So if you're not as familiar with them, head on over there, subscribe, and you're in for a treat. But anyway, plus on top of that, their production value is better than mine. They're more charming than I am, and they're definitely better looking than I am. So anyway, so here we go. For those who are already contributing, and by the way, this is a Discord only chat, the sort of thing that I used to do, and one that I intend to keep doing. doing fairly regularly, just because my Patreon supporters, they deserve something for their support. And so I have these sorts of discussions. Everybody is welcome to watch, but the discussion is from the Discord members, and you can be a Discord supporter for way cheap. $3 a month. And it's all in the description as to how to go about and doing that. Oh, and some good news. This is ad-free, including the recorded version, ad-free, and that's because my last two videos have been extremely successful. So I feel that I can do this one without making any money. So that being the case, if you want to join Patreon to support me or look at some of my merch, I would really appreciate it, but this is ad-free. Just throw me a like, throw me a subscription, and I will be super happy. So they will have to be independent, says Ouija Lego, because once they're self-sustaining due to the Outer Space Treaty. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. For me, I think that anyone who has the guts to get themselves established in a self-sustaining colony, in a place where if you walk outside unprotected, you're dead. And even if you do walk outside in an environmental suit, technical failures lead to your death. I mean, it's a very, very risky business. Just getting there is a very, very risky business. Plus the radiation and other dangers, all of these things make it to where the people who do make the decision to go, I think they have the right to be independent once they've established themselves as being self-sustaining. If they're still relying, obviously, on human government, or rather governments on Earth, well, we can call them human because they're going to be Martians. They're going to be different. Then they're going to still need to be tied to those parent governments for now. Just don't tell Kyle Phelps, just don't tell the current governments there's any intention of independence. Don't rock that boat. Yeah, I would say so. Current governments, of course, are behind this, especially the United States and the ESA. Probably wouldn't like the idea of a government becoming independent immediately. But at the same time, it would be beneficial because then they wouldn't be responsible for supporting them money-wise. Going ballistic, hello, regular supporter of this channel. It would be interesting to figure out what food could be grown locally, what the cuisine would be like, how much can be shipped from Earth, spices, that sort of thing. I do feel that there's a huge variety of food that can be grown, and the reason I feel this is because I worked for a food bank that relied on aquaponics, and aquaponics only needs water and tilapia and food for the tilapia, but in a recycling system that's actually provided by the waste products from the plants themselves. So you can grow all kinds of things, and I have eaten meals from that nonprofit, which sadly went under, not because they had a bad model, but because they had bad leadership who didn't understand the regulations that they were under. But I ate a meal that was exclusively provided by aquaponics, and it was awesome. It was so good. And to think that, poor people at food banks were getting access to this kind of food, it was a great thing and an organization that I love to support. Timothy says, I think corporations will become more involved than governments. Yes, that's entirely possible. Well, obviously SpaceX, being the biggest example of that. They are a colossal corporation at this point, supported by a guy who alternates being the first and second richest person on the planet. That's a big deal. Excuse me. So yeah, corporations might make a big difference. The good news is that Elon Musk believes in self-government. He believes in this colony voting for themselves, direct democracy via the internet, making decisions by majority vote, passing laws by a 2/3 majority and repealing laws by a 1/3 majority. So in other words, it's hard to get a law passed, but it's easy to get it repealed. That's his philosophy, and I actually think that that's a pretty good philosophy. It's definitely bold and different, and nobody else has ever done it before, and I think it's a pretty cool idea. Mining corporations especially, yes, I would agree with that, especially mining corporations that wish to use Mars as a base of operations for mining the asteroid belt. It is easier, as I've said many times, it is easier from a delta V standpoint to mine the asteroid belt from Mars than it is to go from Earth to the moon. And that's kind of hard to believe. It has nothing to do with proximity. It has to do with gravity. Because Earth is so damn difficult to escape because of its huge gravity, it's actually easier to mine the asteroid belt from Mars than it is for Earth to mine the moon. And that's going to be a huge thing for mining corporations in the future. And there could be some Martian mining corporations that could get crazy rich as a result. How do we handle rare dietary elements such as selenium? Lots of shipments from Earth to stockpile. That's a very good question. Selenium might be available on Mars. It's hard to say. Yeah, that is a very good point. Cully just said that as well. That's Framrick, by the way, who is a member of Team Angry and a huge, huge asset to this channel. Sorry if I embarrassed you there, Framrick, but you are a huge, huge supporter of this channel and do a lot of the stuff that's in my videos comes straight from this guy's mouth because he's a physicist, because he understands nuclear power. So anything that I do about nuclear starships, I run it past him to make sure that my science is correct. So thank you so much, Framrick. You're a big help. And also Cyclonics, a fellow from Australia. He does so much for this channel in terms of the thumbnails, in terms of animations, so many things that this young fellow is doing to make this channel successful. Thank you so much, Cyclonics. So I've got a lot of people in this on this Discord server that are making this channel successful. If you want to be part of it, as I said before, it's just $3 a month. It's cheap to become part of this. And then you can meet these folks, DM me, etc. But there's a lot of other benefits as well. Okay, the Mad Lawyer says, we will take the same problems we have on Earth to Mars, regardless of whether they have an independent government. Humans will bring their emotions, hate, love, jealousy, anger, disagreements to Mars, and we will have similar issues there. I agree with you, the Mad Lawyer, to a point. The one thing where I may disagree with you on is the fact that in order to survive on Mars, unlike Earth, in order to survive there, we are going to need to work together. If we don't work together as a team, we're dead. If you come down to the simplest thing as a fire, for example, in a high oxygen environment, that's going to destroy the colony very quickly unless everybody does something about it very quickly. There's going to be no room for cowards, no room for people who are going to be looking to save their own skins, because you can't save your own skin when everybody's in the same bubble, when everybody's under the same, the same dome, that sort of thing. So in any event, yeah, by the way, if you're the kind of person that enjoys doing a super chat, and this is something that one of my members just reminded me, just become a Patreon now. It's in the description for $3 if you're going to super chat anyway, and then you can talk here on the in the general chat room. That's the last mention I'm going to make of this for a while. But in any event, Martian dust. Suit ports, enter your suit in a separate chamber or Matt Damon airlocks. Don't worry, dust won't follow us in. Well, dust is definitely going to be a huge issue. The fortunate thing is that dust mitigation technology is already being worked on extensively with the moon. Right now, I mentioned a lot of this in my most recent video. Dynetics is doing a great deal to try to handle dust mitigation. And that's going to be a big part of being successful on the moon. So whatever technology we use there is going to be extra useful on Mars, because Mars has everything that lunar dust has, plus, of course, the perchlorates. Legal structure on Mars, boy, that's a tough one. Very tough. If we do things the same way as we do it here, what happens? Do we have prisons? Boy, that's a difficult question, because prisons are so incredibly wasteful when you're talking about life support and that sort of thing. That's a very tough question. And one of the reasons why I think we're going to need very special people going to Mars. And that's one of the questions that I'm going to be asking in my first video. What sort of people are we going to have going to Mars? And how are we going to attract people to go to this incredibly harsh environment? But I'm going to catch up real quickly. Switzerland has direct democracy, modern comms tech, and the ability to vote on any issue instantly. Is direct democracy the way to go? Very interesting. I actually was unaware that Switzerland was going that route. So yeah, that may indeed be the way to go. That would be a fantastic thing. So I tend to support it. I think that Elon Musk is right about this. The mad lawyer, let the Martians decide for themselves what works. We on Earth have no idea what their needs will be 10 years into colonization. Yeah, very good point. There's a lot of things that we have a hard time anticipating that's going to be occurring. Kyle Phelps, I'll be honest, one of the big reasons I joined was the Discord community. Thanks to be here discussing. Well, thank you so much for that, Kyle. I really do appreciate that. Joey Jojo, hello. A truly international approach is needed. Can't exclude any nation in a Mars colony. Do I think the American government would stop Starship launches if, for example, Chinese nationals would be on board? We need a Soyuz Apollo moment with the Chinese Space Agency. I agree. I do think that we need to somehow patch things up with China, but right now it seems very unlikely. China is buzzing the hell out of Taiwan. They're doing a lot to provoke conflict, and that's just not good. That's something that's going to make it very difficult for us to have that Apollo-Soyuz moment. So until China backs off of the whole Taiwan thing, I think it's going to be extremely challenging. Power for a Martian colony, solar ground plus a bit of kilowatt-power nuclear, move to solar orbital and ground eventually. I do like solar orbital a lot. I think that would be a good alternative when we lose our ground solar power as a result of dust storms. But I do think that some nuclear power will ultimately be necessary. And I think that nuclear power with low-grade uranium is our best option, things that are very, very tough to weaponize. We have the Artemis Accords, maybe draft Martian Accords in advance. I do agree with that, Timothy. I think that that's a very good idea. We need to start figuring this out early, especially as Starship gets closer and closer to its objective. Boy, we have a lot of people participating. Thank you. I'm falling behind here. Phil Rogan says future Martians will be evolvers. They will begin evolving to the 1/3 gravity. Yup, that's one of my videos too, by the way. The different air, the food, the cold, they will slowly start to become Martians. Next generations will maybe be able to tolerate lower pressures. Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. I'm sure one third would repeal murder. That's an interesting one, going ballistic. Wow, interesting question. I would say perhaps there must be some exceptions to that. Boy, I don't know if one third would repeal murder, especially the kinds of people who are going to be going to Mars. I would say that they're going to be a little bit more idealistic than that, but it's hard, as I can say. Just a reminder that's been given by one of my supporters: like and subscribe. And thank you so much again to Patreon supporters. Kyle Phelps says, I actually like the idea of repealing laws easily. Never thought of how that would work, but it would make the laws that persist more relevant and valuable to current inhabitants. Yes, I do think Elon has something here, but I do think, once again, that there needs to be some exceptions, obviously. We'll need some basic laws that cannot be repealed. I agree with that. Others, yes. Deuterium, boy, that's a big question. Deuterium is going to be, and once again, sorry, I'm getting a bit of a headache as well. Hope I'm not coming down with something here. This would be a terrible time for that. Deuterium is more available in the gas giants than it is on Mars. But obviously, deuterium being an important aspect of fusion power. So yeah, I would say that that's going to be an important thing to look for on Mars. Although, we can also look in the asteroid belt, and Jupiter or Saturn, both are going to be easier as well. Oh, here's a grim thought: recycling, bury the dead or Soylent Green. Oh boy, that's a tough question. I would say perhaps a compromise. Use for the dead who agree to it, for the dead who sign off on it, have them be part of fertilizer or something along those lines. Maybe something like that. Even that, though, is pretty morbid. Not sure if we're all made equally when it comes to making decisions. Yeah, that is true. That is true, Collapsar. And that's the problem with direct democracy, isn't it? But it's the problem with every democracy. Every democracy has this issue. There are some people who get to vote who have no idea what they're voting about. So in any event, anything without leadership would be ideal. Leadership is vulnerable to random casualties in the hostile landscape. Good point. Very good point. Factions, says Supax. Boy, that's a good question as well. There may indeed be factions, but at the same time, I would say that Mars and Martian colonists are going to need to work together. That's going to be a very key factor, and something that we need to, that any Martian colonist is going to need to always keep in mind. Having competing factions on Mars, unless they have competing colonies, is going to make things very difficult on the survival front. And survival is going to be the most important aspect, obviously. Okay, we need autonomous resource refineries that can handle multiple minerals before we send colonists. Good point, Johnny Spacer. Wow, but that's a lot that needs to be done before we send colonists. Perhaps we send explorers during that process to help with those refineries, help get them established, that sort of thing. Kyle says, in all team environments, it's much easier for somebody to lead in their specialty and let others lead in theirs. Very interesting point. Interesting point indeed. And then Supax, of course, brings up leadership, and once again, maybe that's the best model, or maybe direct democracy is the best model. Blue Origin has developed a ladder against dust. Yeah, that's something I've brought up a couple of times. Totally different subject, and I'm not going to elaborate on it, but I do think it's funny. Okay, Phil James says, I imagine the future looking a lot like The Expanse. Boy, I'll tell you, Phil, as much as I love The Expanse, I hope not. especially with the latest season. And of course, the books are different than the TV show, but that has a very grim view of the future, to say the least. But at the same time, that may be precisely what happens. In answer to the power for the Martian colony, Andy says yes. However, the colony will have a long way to go before atomic self-sufficiency. I would agree with that, especially since anything nuclear related is going to have a lot of regulations involved with it. Do I feel that corporate colonies will follow the same path that early coal mining did in the American East with company housing, shopping, even script? Boy, I hope not. Just because in the 19th century, when those things happened, there was a whole lot of hardworking people who got ripped off. I'm not too certain if I like the idea. At the same time, if it can be done, in more of an idealistic way, perhaps that's something that can work. I think tons and tons of people will want to move to Mars, especially once the colony gets self-sustaining and its teething problems are out of the way, says Ouija Lego. Perhaps would love to get away from all the drama here on Earth. Yes, I do believe, and this is something I'm going to say in my video, and I'm sorry, gosh, I'm sweating a little bit. I think, well, for one thing, it snowed here, and I think I may have turned up the heat a bit. So in any event, people would love to get away from all the drama. I agree. At the same time, I think that there needs to be a lot of psychiatric testing, that sort of thing. I think that we need to be certain that we're taking the right kind of people, because it's not like after a couple of years it's going to be easy to go back. Anybody who decides to go back is going to be going through a lot of agony as a result of the gravity change. As Supak says, as soon as we're land, we're not American, Canadian, etc. We are Martian. I do tend to agree that that's going to ultimately be the case. I'm not sure if that's going to happen right away. Deacon says the Chinese government would have to change. I do tend to agree, once again, just because of their aggressive behavior as of late. Phobos Miner says, do I think actually the first clients of SpaceX would be U.S. soldiers from the Space Force? No issues with discipline. Boy, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of having a military presence as the first presence on Mars. That would encourage other countries to do the same. And then the more of that you have, the more potential that exists for a conflict, which is the last thing we need on another planet. Once again, though, conflict is the nature of our species, so maybe indeed that is the case. Guys, I'm going to ask you for 2 minutes. I do apologize for this, and I'm not very professional about this. I'm going to turn the heat down just a tad, because locked in here, it's being a bit of an annoyance. Okay, actually killed the heat. So in any event, I hope that helps out a little bit. Are there other companies working on equipment engineering needed for a Mars colony? The answer to that is yes. SpaceX is only the railroad, but yes, they're doing a lot to establish a presence on Mars, a human presence. And I have a lot of videos on the subject, actually, if you want to check all of that out. Has to be nuclear power, says Kyle. Other options aren't nearly as attractive. Nuclear is definitely the easiest. The one problem, of course, once again, is regulatory things. Is the Atomic Energy Commission going to give that sort of thing to to a private company? That's a big question, I must ask. Okay, at the same time, does it become a corporate colony, SpaceX on Mars, or does it become the Plymouth Rock moment and a colony will start to develop a constitution on its own? I would say that the latter is more likely, depending, of course, on how involved SpaceX is in the whole situation. But it should be something that that the Martians get to establish on their own. Only Nixon could go to China. Only international collaboration can go to Mars, says the mad lawyer. Idealistically, I agree with you. From an idealistic standpoint, I definitely agree with you. From a practical standpoint, China's position really needs to change from an international relations issue. So thank you very much, by the way, for what you just said, Framrick. Like I said, there had to come a time when I did one of these live streams when I was feeling a little under the weather. So in any event, I'm going to power through. Compost the dead, says Starliner Glitch. Yeah, I kind of said that. It is a bit morbid, but at the same time, it's the most practical thing. I would say, though, that the person involved would have to sign off on something before the incident occurred, or their families. Phil Rogan said, if I was going to Mars, I would just smuggle some Sensimilia seeds in my pants and everything would be just fine. I could actually just say that I'm on another planet. Oh, my Lord. Well, that is one solution, depending on how effective we are on smuggling. But I'll tell you something, with aquaponics and the ability to grow pretty much whatever we want to grow, there's going to be all sorts of things that end up getting grown, and there's no way to stop it as far as that's concerned. Pure democracy, says Johnny, can lead to the tyranny of the majority. That is true. I suppose one of the solutions is the 1/3 majority getting to repeal laws, that sort of thing, so they aren't, subjected to the tyranny of the majority. But yeah, that is a problem. Every government does indeed have its problems. There's seasons 1 through 5 getting watched again on the Expanse, and for those of you who haven't watched that, do so. It is the most realistic science fiction series that's ever been created when it comes to man's colonization of the solar system. So yeah, and the mad lawyer says that, yeah, the Expanse suggests that we're going to have exactly the same problems. And indeed, yes, we may, especially as generation after generation passes. However, one thing that contributed, if I may, spoilers, if I may say, one of the big problems that exists in the Expanse is the fact that Earth exploits the belt. They take their resources without letting them share in the spoils, which gets them angry and leads to problems. That's the sort of thing that hopefully we can avoid in the future. It's if Earth can, if once, organizations can, declare their independence as early as possible, it'll be harder to exploit them. But once again, hard to say an AI leader. We may be stuck with that no matter what if you listen to Elon. I wouldn't say competitive factions, neighboring supportive factions, and yeah, maybe so, SuperX, maybe so. I like all these ideas, by the way. It's helping me with what I'm thinking about for my Friday episode. One of the big reasons that I did this. Find uranium on Mars, then import the reactors. Yep. That's one way to get around the issue. Going Ballistic says, in Cornwall, there were stanary courts that were separate from English law. There was a court of tinners to take care of their own. Might be the same construct in Mars for different groups. Very good point. Very good point indeed. A lot of people making good points for all of this. Phil Rogan says, when you swim 10 meters below water on Earth, the pressure doubles to 2 bar. If there were caves with liquid water deep underground on Mars, you could swim in them if they were sealed. Very good point. There's actually a lot of ways that you can swim on Mars. There's a lot of water there, lots and lots of water there. If you can just isolate them, put them in a pressure dome, that sort of thing, you could definitely swim on Mars. There's a lot of ways to do it. Kyle Phelps, I think a Mars colony is about taking the right mix of the right people. Elon mentions the Foundation series, seeding a colony with specific focus and ideals. Yes, I think we're going to have to be very specific about who we take. That's going to be a very important thing. Collapsed Star says, current space missions have a military chain of command with a commander, so I wouldn't be surprised if a Mars colony government has a rigid military ruling class. Yeah, that's true. At the same time, though, we have the ISS and we have multiple organizations, and yes, there is kind of a commander, but at the same time, it doesn't have that same kind of military rigidity on the ISS. Just because you have the Russians, the U.S., the ESA, etc., especially between the Russians and the U.S. Framrick says, interesting if it's a military colony, corporate structure, new world type colony. Yeah, who knows? It's going to be an interesting future, no doubt. Okay, so. Thanks very much, Mad Lawyer, for what you just said about the heat and all that sort of thing. Framik says a little less conversation, a little more action, kind of sums up the Mars colonization effort from Earth governments. There are thorium deposits in the prime landing site for SpaceX. Why not use that? Really, I actually was unaware of that. That's interesting stuff. And yeah, it could definitely be used. Actually need to create the reactors as well. But still, nevertheless, very good suggestion. If you're born on Mars, what citizenship do you get? Parental, Martian only? That's a very big question, and one that we also need to investigate. So yeah, these are all very, very good questions, all of which need to be answered. Thorium fuel cycle would be better with regard to control of weapons grade material, as long as we can master the technology until then. And then we have Kyle answering the born on Mars thing. This goes back to the regulatory questions and independence. Will Earth governments really just let go? Well, it all depends on their ability to do something about it. Once Mars is self-sustaining, it's going to be very difficult for Earth on a military standpoint to take any effective action. Not to say that they can't, but they would have a difficult time doing it. Phil Rogan says Mars won't be for the common people. It'll be academics, scientists, rich tourists, hundreds of years before you see ordinary people going there, even if things work out. I agree with you, Phil, to a degree. One thing that we need to keep in mind is we're going to need common people in order to serve common needs. We're going to need, food service people and janitors. Not all of that can be done by robots, or if they can be done by robots, that's going to be expensive too. So we may actually have some ordinary people as well. Elon likes to talk about it. Reminds me of numerous Star Trek episodes about the AI computer making decisions on behalf of the community. Yeah, that happens all the time. And a picture just got thrown in of big scale mining. Yeah, very cool. That's a cool picture that just got thrown on the general chat room. Maybe our colonization of the solar system will be more like Cowboy Bebop, with terraforming eventually, minus the wrecked moon. Yes, Cowboy Bebop, I've actually only seen 1 or 2 episodes of that, to be honest. So I'm finally getting caught up, thank God. Soja said solar satellites beaming down energy in some form might be a good non-nuclear alternative for power. I do agree with you there. I think that that's a very good non-nuclear solution to our power issues, especially if regulatory commissions start becoming a bit of a problem. Hopefully the system won't be class-based. Yeah, says Sigmund, I agree with you. I certainly hope that isn't the case as well. Once again, it's based on the idea that we're all going to need each other in order to survive. It's going to be super important, far more important than it is here on Earth. The participation of everybody, everybody's, contribution is going to be vital. Do we move underground into lava tubes, spend more money and effort to go for surface colonies? Well, Framrick, you know my opinion on that one. I do like the idea of surface dwellings just because it's going to be tough enough to live on Mars without the ability to just look out at a glorious landscape. I really think that that's going to be one of the big positives. Another question that I still have is, how do we get people to go? We may have lots of people who want to go, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right people, that they're the people that's going to be the most, the most helpful, the most useful. The more investment an Earth government makes on Mars, the more it's going to have leverage and make a high degree of control. That's a very good point, Johnny. Could make an independent Mars a tough thing indeed. So yeah. Phil Rogan, terraformers will have a lot of trouble making an atmosphere without a magnetosphere. Maybe stuck with suits, make them sexy. I like my video on that subject. Yeah, I did something on the biosuit, which I really think is a great idea. And I think it's very doable. We just need to invest some money in doing it to provide mechanical pressure on the human body of 1/3 atmosphere, which is all we need to do for somebody to survive. I think it's just way more efficient, but that's getting off topic a little bit. But at the same time, it's a lot more fun to go around the surface of Mars if you're not weighed down by a huge suit and you have a robot following you around with the life support. It would make the whole, exercise of operating on the surface of Mars way, way easier. Are we depending on Martian colonies making a profit, or are we just investing because the Earth back up and it's the right thing to do? That's a very good question. Once again, there's a lot of wealth in the asteroid belt for one thing, and that's going to be easier to access from Mars. So there's definitely a profit to be made if people are willing to look at the long-term objective of making a profit. So just, and once again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing people's little tags here. I doubt that we will see independent colonies early on. It will be mostly corporate, where everybody fulfills a function. Yeah, that's I'd say a very, very possible thing. It could take a while before we have independence. Dust storms could disrupt the power beam down from solar power satellites. I'd be interested to see exactly how much of it would be disrupted, depending on how powerful of lasers you use, that sort of thing. But yeah, it certainly would provide some disruption. Artificial magnetosphere, orbital stations. Once again, we need to keep in mind that if we do terraform, the amount of time that it took the solar wind to strip away the atmosphere was millions of years. It would actually, if we can terraform Mars, which would be a huge undertaking, by the way, we could probably make it pretty easy to replenish the atmosphere without an artificial magnetosphere. Not to say that we shouldn't have one, but still at the same time, I think that we can terraform without one. If we're willing to put all the effort into making an artificial atmosphere, we can also replenish it. It takes a long time to strip an atmosphere away with the solar wind. Framrick says, do we see Martian colonies as a dead end or as a bridging outpost into developing the inner solar system, farming the asteroid belt? I would like to say the latter, Framrick. I hope that we do move on to other objectives in the solar system in the long run. To make all of these things happen. They will need tons of power. Yes, they would definitely need tons of power when we're talking about artificial magnetosphere orbital stations. Kyle says, this is one of the reasons I'm a lot more excited about missions to Saturn, Titus, Enceladus, Rhea, etc. Atmosphere is such a big deal and isn't answered on Mars. Titan does indeed have a very good atmosphere, one to where pressure would no longer be an issue, where you could tear your suit, and even though we can't breathe the atmosphere, you could tear your suit and it wouldn't be an instant death sentence. You would have plenty of time to resolve the issue. Would there be a need for currency on Mars? Depends on the nature of the government, Phil. Karl Marx would say no. Karl Marx was always against the idea of currency. Everybody does their job, so why do you have a need for money? Anarchists would also say that there's no need for money. That's something that enslaves people. At the same time, capitalism would definitely say that you need currency and that you need incentive in order to work. Very interesting to see what would happen, and the kind of people who go to Mars, I think, will answer that question. If we have idealistic people who are going to do their job no matter what, then we don't need the currency. But at the same time, if that's not the case, which is, pretty much been the case on Earth so far, then we'll need a currency. So here's some ideas for who should go from the mad lawyer: scientists, physicians, engineers, yoga teachers, and yoga pants. And of course, mad lawyers, definitely need them. Very, very critical. Nuclear, says Timothy, as far as the magnetosphere, we still have magnetosphere conversations going on. Going Ballistic says, I am ready to go because I need to drop 30 kilograms. My doctor recommends a vegan diet, plus my back would like the 1/3 G. Yeah, all those things would be a very positive thing. It'd be kind of like waiting around in a swimming pool kind of environment full time. That would definitely be a good thing. Elon loves cryptocurrency for the currency question. Do we transition to a Star Trek where there is no currency model or carry on a capitalistic structure? Framrick, the Star Trek there is no currency thing seems to actually have it depends on which episode you watch. In the original series, they talk about credits all the time. And then, of course, there's this Latinum stuff, the gold press Latinum or whatever the heck they talked about there. There was currency, just not necessarily used by the Federation. Kind of hard to say. So Ouija Lego says both, and we're talking about doing colonizing for the right thing and making a profit. Soju says one needs to find an EM band for the atmosphere, which is transparent. Only then dust storms are not a problem for solar power generation. Very interesting point. Very interesting point indeed. Phil Rogan said, did I see the live YouTube event called First Assembly? A bunch of people asking for investment dollars to build the prototype space station with artificial gravity. No, I didn't actually see the live event. Was that that foundation, the folks who are trying to build that huge space station? You can feel free to answer that question at your leisure. But I didn't see it, if that indeed was the case. Let's see here. Could a colony use money? We may have a method to ration supplies. What would you do with the money? Send it to families back on Earth. Maybe a colony needs to be a true socialist society. Oh, and that's such a bad word in the United States, socialism, even though just about all of Europe is a fusion of socialism and democracy. So is Canada. But that's a very bad word here in America for a lot of different, I don't know exactly why, but it is. And then there's Boston Dynamics, Mules on Mars, and a picture just got downloaded by Johnny. Thank you for doing that. That's very cool indeed. Phil James says, I'm not a fan of crypto at the moment because I'm trying to get a new graphics card and the miners have bought them all. Very interesting. I don't know. I don't get into cryptocurrency, so I wouldn't know. Framrick says, just nuke the core of Mars via a drilling machine to spin it up. The core has has this down pat. That movie, The Core. Oh my God, I hated that movie. And yes, I know that was just a joke. Boy, that was a terrible movie. But in any event, yeah, that would be one way to do it, wouldn't it? Barter economy at first, says M2. Yeah, why not? Barter economy worked in the United States for a long time and lots of other places too, for that matter. Sorry, mouth just keeps drying up. I'm gonna have to keep this pretty strictly to an hour. We have about 12 minutes. Yeah, about 12 minutes left. Sorry about this, guys. Just not up to speed today. I do apologize. Like I said, it's not like I feel terrible. I'm just running out of steam, so I do apologize for that. Problem with putting Spot on Mars: can only operate for 30 minutes, requires a lot of power. Yes, we would need new batteries, and batteries capable of operating in extreme cold. So it was for the Gateway Foundation, says Phil. Yeah, I'll tell you, here's one of the reasons, Phil, why I'm a little, and I'm going to have to do a video, I guess, at some point. I've actually asked for an interview, have not gotten a response on this. Incidentally, one other reminder, please subscribe. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and join Patreon if you want to be part of this conversation. But Gateway should have a partnership with Sierra Nevada. They've already spoken as if Dream Chaser is the vehicle they want to use for emergency escape vehicles. The collaboration between those two companies would be a perfect idea, and Sierra Nevada was founded by billionaires. They have money to invest in, yes, and yet they haven't. And that kind of makes me wonder, is anybody with serious cash ready to invest in this? And they're going to need serious cash to do something like this. The mad lawyer, anarchists believe the first thing we do to achieve anarchy is kill all the lawyers. Oh dear. Going ballistic says Navy vessels effectively operate currency free. That's a good point. Very good point. Phil Rogan says you won't need currency if there's nothing to buy apart from a bug pizza or Martian beer. Yeah, that's another good point. Mimi, hello, Mimi. Currency is vital. It acts as a common means of exchange, but it needs to be hard currency based on something vital, such as energy. Yeah. A lot of good points being made here. So yeah, maybe currency, maybe not. Once again, that's going to be up to the Martians. Phobos Miner says, I don't think it's comparable to ISS. One is purely for science. Good point. Now we're talking about resources, a bit like the Antarctic. Every country will want a piece of the cake. You guys are too idealistic. Well, I am an idealist. There's no question about that. I do tend to be an idealist, especially when we're talking about the kind of people who are going to make the supreme sacrifice to go to Mars. I just tend to think that they're going to be different kinds of human beings, but I could very well be wrong. A link just got put up on the first assembly thing. Like I say, if you're into Gateway Foundation, by all means, check it out. I know I will. I'll probably call them and ask them for another interview, although I'm probably going to ask tough questions, so we'll see how that goes. Framrick, will anyone get to go to Mars? We have to have the relevant skills and make some points bar before you're allowed to go. I think, yeah, we definitely need to be selective about who goes to Mars, at least at first. I think that's going to be extremely important. So yeah, big issue. Is there any reason to use Mars for more than a depot, gathering materials, building more ships, launching them further, and research? There's lots of reasons to use Mars. For one thing, it's a second home for the human species, a great place to put people. It has a lot of water, a lot of water in terms of subsurface ice and in the polar ice caps. There's a lot lot of things that make Mars a perfect second home for the human species, which I think we're going to need for survival in the long run. A lot of minerals and metals and that sort of thing to build a colony, etc., that don't necessarily exist in space or on an asteroid. Like one asteroid might have a lot of metals, another asteroid might have a lot of water, but you're not necessarily going to get that mix, whereas you will get that mix on Mars. Energy credits would make sense, kind of similar to the Paris Accords, Cully. That's what seems to be the case there. The mad lawyer need to have certain skills, so the point system makes sense. Yeah, I would agree with that. Once again, just fighting through it. But once again, I definitely need to make a good video here, and I definitely want you guys to have this opportunity. So thank you for what you said, Framrick. The mad lawyer, but after 10 years, let anyone who wants to go thereafter sufficiently healthy. That's a very good point. Send the really qualified people first, etc. And yes, Sigmund, I used to do 90-minute shows. I'm going to do my best to do 90-minute shows in the future. So yeah, just today it's going to have to be an hour, and I do apologize for that. Martian society would be a fascinating topic for a video, says Framrick. Yeah, and it's actually going to be kind of part of what I'm doing with To the Future. And once again, the whole reason for this live stream is because of To the Future and the collaboration that I'm doing with them about the Martian way, about establishing a colony, perhaps becoming independent, that sort of thing. Will future colonists be indentured servants to mega corporations, says Cully. Man, I hope not, but it could happen. That could definitely happen. Man, I would hate that. Bezosville and Elon Town. Werner von Braun's day, the leader of Mars, was called the Elon. Oh dear. Okay. The mad lawyer says we are lucky. Oh, well, thanks very much. I appreciate that. Thanks for what you just said, the mad lawyer. Phil James, being SpaceX makes isolation not so bad. Yeah, I've been isolated myself, even though South Carolina doesn't seem to believe in isolation and is actually one of the worst states in the union for COVID. Tons of people have it here because there isn't much control. I've stayed isolated myself because I've got a channel to run. I don't need to be catching COVID, for God's sake, especially if it makes me super sick. I would hate to see lag on my Angry Astronaut live stream. 20 minutes, no thanks. Although if they, that's true, 20-minute lag, wow, that's what it would be. Palestine, a guinea pig, I'm all in. Yeah, there would be a huge lag if I were to leave there, if I were to live there rather, or if you were to live there, because obviously of light travel time. It could be if they borrow money to go to Mars. Yeah, Johnny, in terms of the indentured servitude thing, yeah, if they have to borrow, then yeah, maybe they will be those kinds of people. Going Ballistic says, the military is almost perfect socialism. Do your chores and you are guaranteed food, clothing, shelter, medical, education. Work extra hard and you get PX privileges. Yeah, it's a good point. It is a lot like that. Johnny says, I was in the Army and it sucked. Yes, I lived in a military town with Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, the Air Force Academy, NORAD. I knew a lot of people who were in the military, and a lot of them said that it sucked. So it's kind of hard to say. Texas is way worse than South Carolina in terms of COVID, probably the worst. I'm sorry to hear that, Ouija. Please stay safe. Similar to some U.S. immigrants. Just says, do you think the organization Mars Society with Zubrin would have any tangible impact on setting up any Mars settlement? Well, Zubrin has his own opinions about what should be done, and he doesn't always agree with Elon. And whoever has the money is going to make a lot of the rules. And if Elon is responsible for setting up the colony, then, it's going to be kind of hard to argue with the guy. So is that mean how things are going to go? Does the guy with the cash make the rules? A lot of questions. A lot of questions, I have to say. Oh dear, we only have 3 minutes. How fast an hour goes. Wow, crazy stuff. Do I think the organization, oh, I'm sorry, Zubrin is a bit of a hothead? Yes, indeed, he is. Darth Rust, someday it may be helpful to have a deep dive on just colony sustainment issues and whatnot, independence, and what independence actually means, such as how do you know when it happens? Yeah, an experiment in independence might be a very good thing indeed. So, wow, lots of amazing information that I'm going to have to go over in detail before I make this video for Friday. Exuberant, exuberant. The Chinese will want their own colony, says Ouija. Yeah, that's possible. They may establish their own colony, and oh dear, what's going to happen maybe if that happens? Will there be conflict? Who knows? Johnny says, get well soon. Yeah, thanks. I don't know exactly how ill I am. All I know is that I am a bit tired. It's a bit hot, but that could be just because I turned up the heat, that sort of thing. I don't feel horrible. I just feel drained, etc. I have been working pretty hard on videos lately, that sort of thing. So it's not like I'm dying or anything like that. I just know that I only have so much energy. So who wouldn't be after so many years of getting told no? Yeah, Zubrin's been told no for so many times. Yeah, hard to say as to who wouldn't be frustrated. So in any event, I'm going to there's two more people typing. I'm going to let a couple more suggestions. We only have 1 minute. So in any event, I'm going to let a couple of people make a couple more statements real quick. Thank you so much. Sorry to keep things as short as I did, but lots of really good stuff that came across. Get ready for a very, very special collaboration with To the Future. This is going to be something truly awesome about a future Martian colony, about Martian independence, and what we can expect, what could happen. Futurism at its best. And if you're not a subscriber to the Future, please do so. And please subscribe here, leave a like as well. So until we have a colony on Mars and people are in a position to make these sorts of decisions on whether to rule themselves, whether they should have a currency, what the laws should be, everything that's necessary to have a society, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.